Marley was dead, to begin with. There's no doubt whatever about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the undertaker, and the chief mourner. Scrooge signed it, and Scrooge's name was good. So there can be no doubt that Marley was dead. This must be distinctly understood, or nothing wonderful can come of the story that I am about to relate. Old Marley was as dead as a doornail. Now, Scrooge knew Marley was dead. Of course he did. How could it be otherwise? Scrooge and Marley had been partners in business for, I don't know how many years. Scrooge was Marley's sole friend, his sole mourner. But Scrooge never painted out old Marley's name. There it stood for years afterward above the warehouse door, Scrooge and Marley. People new to the business sometimes called Scrooge Scrooge, sometimes they called him Marley. Scrooge answered to both names. It was all the same to him. Oh, but he was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone, was Scrooge. A squeezing, wrenching, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner, as solitary as an oyster. External heat and cold had little influence on him. No warmth could warm him. No cold could chill him. But what did Scrooge care? That was the very thing he liked. To edge his way along the crowded pathways of life, warning all human sympathy to keep its distance. Once upon a time, upon all the good days in the year, upon Christmas Eve, Scrooge sat busy in his counting house. It was cold, bleak, biting, foggy weather. The city clocks had only just gone 3, and yet it was quite dark already. Ebenezer Scrooge sat with the door to his office open so that he might keep an eye upon his clerk, Bob Cratchit, who sat in a dismal little cell beyond, copying letters. Now, Scrooge had a very small fire, but Bob Cratchit's fire was smaller still. It was only 1 coal. But Bob didn't dare replenish it because Scrooge kept the coal box in his own room. He iced his office in the dog days, and he didn't warm it one bit at Christmas. "A Merry Christmas, Uncle! God save you!" That was the voice of Fred, Scrooge's nephew. "Bah!" said Scrooge. "Humbug! Christmas a humbug, Uncle? You don't mean that. I'm sure I do. Out upon Merry Christmas! What's Christmas time to you but a time for paying your bills without money, for finding yourself a year older and not an hour richer? If I could work my will, every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled alive with his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart. Uncle, nephew, keep Christmas in your own way. And let me keep it in mine." "Keep it, but you don't keep it." "Let me leave it alone then. Much good may it do you. Much good it has ever done you." "There are many things from which I have derived good that I have not profited from, I dare say, Christmas time among the rest. And yet I'm always sure of Christmas when it has come around that it is a happy time, a kind, forgiving, charitable time, the only time I know of in all the long calendar of the year, when men and women everywhere seem to open their shut-up hearts freely. And therefore, Uncle, although it has never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pocket, I say Christmas has done me good. I say it will do me good, and I say God bless it." Bob Cratchit involuntarily applauded. "Let me hear another sound from you, Bob Cratchit, and you'll keep your Christmas by losing your situation." "Nephew, you're quite a powerful speaker, sir. I wonder why you don't go into Parliament." "Uncle, please let us be friends. Come dine with us tomorrow on Christmas Day." Scrooge said that he would see his nephew. Indeed he did. In fact, Scrooge went the whole length of the expression to say he would see his nephew in that extremity first. But why, Uncle? Why? Why did you get married? Because I fell in love. Because you fell in love. Good afternoon. I am sorry with all my heart to find you so resolute. But I made this trial in homage to Christmas, and I will keep my Christmas humor to the last. And so, a Merry Christmas, Uncle. Good afternoon, and a Happy New Year. Good afternoon. Scrooge's nephew left the office without an angry word, notwithstanding. Bob Cratchit, in letting Scrooge's nephew out, let another gentleman in. He was a portly gentleman, pleasant to behold. Scrooge and Marley's, I believe. Do I have the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley? Mr. Marley has been dead these 7 years. He died 7 years ago, this very night. At this festive season of the year, Mr. Scrooge, it is more than usually desirable to make a contribution to aid the poor and the destitute who suffer greatly at the present time. Many thousands are in want of common comforts. Many hundreds of thousands are in want of common necessaries, sir. Are there no prisons? Why, yes. Plenty of prisons, and the union workhouses, they are still in operation. Yes, they are, although I wish I could say they were not. How much shall I put you down for? Nothing. You wish to remain anonymous. I wish to be left alone. Since you ask me what I wish, gentlemen, that is my answer. I don't make merry myself at Christmas, and I can't afford to keep idle people merry. I help pay for the prisons and the workhouses. They cost enough, and those who are badly off must go there. But many can't go there, and many would rather die. Well, if they would rather die, they had better do it and decrease the surplus population. Good afternoon. At length, the time for shutting up the counting house arrived. You'll want all day off tomorrow, I suppose. Oh, yes, if it's quite convenient, sir, said Bob Cratchit. It is not convenient, and it's not fair. And if I was to dock you £0.50 for it, you'd find yourself mightily ill-used, I'll be bound. Yes, sir. And yet you don't find me ill-used when I pay a day's wages for no work. It's only once a year, sir. A poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December. Very well. I suppose you must have the whole day. Be here all the earlier the next morning. Bob Cratchit said that he would, and the office was closed in a twinkling. And then the fog and the darkness thickened. Scrooge ate his usual melancholy dinner in his usual melancholy tavern, and then he went home to bed. Scrooge lived in a suite of rooms that had once belonged to his deceased partner. The building was old enough now and gloomy enough. Nobody lived in it but Scrooge. Now, it is a fact that there is nothing at all particular about the knocker on the front door of this house, except that it was very large, and yet Scrooge, putting his key in the lock of the door, saw in the knocker not a knocker, but Marley's face. Marley's face. It was not angry or ferocious, and it looked upon Scrooge as Marley had often looked upon him in life. And as Scrooge stared fixedly at this phenomena, it was a knocker again. Scrooge said, "Bah! Humbug!" and closed the door behind him with a bang. And that bang echoed through the house like thunder. But Scrooge was not a man to be frightened by echoes. He went up the staircase slowly, trimming his candle as he went, not caring a button for its being very dark, because darkness was cheap, and Scrooge liked it. Now, as he got up to his bedroom, he made sure that all was right. He had just enough recollection of the face to do that. And then, after securing his bedroom, he locked the door behind him. Double locked the door, which was not his custom. And then he changed into his nightgown, his nightcap and slippers, and sat down before the fire to take his gruel. As Scrooge threw his head back in the chair, his eyes came to rest upon a bell, a disused bell that hung in a corner of the room, and it was with a strange kind of fascination and an inexplicable dread that Scrooge watched that bell begin to swing, and soon it rang out, and so did every other bell inside of the house. And then there was the sound of something deep down below, as if someone were dragging chains across the casks in the wine cellar. And then the cellar door blew open with a bang, and then the sound was coming nearer now. It was on the floor below, and then it was coming up the staircase, and then it was right outside Scrooge's bedroom door. "It is humbug still! I won't believe it!" And then a specter walked in through the closed door. And as it did so, the flame of Scrooge's candle leapt up as if to say, "I know him, Marley's ghost." The same face, the very same. The spirit's body was transparent, and it wore a large chain clasped about its middle. That chain was long and wound about him like a coil, and it was made of safes, cash boxes, and great purses wrought in steel. "How now? Who are you? What do you want with me?" "Much," it was Marley's voice. No doubt about it. "I ask you again, who are you?" "Ask me who I was." Who were you then?" "In life I was your partner, Jacob Marley." "You don't believe in me." "I don't. What evidence would you have of my reality beyond that of your own senses?" I don't know." "Why do you doubt your own senses?" "Because a little thing affects them. A slight disorder of the stomach makes them cheats. You might be an undigested bit of beef, a blot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, a bit of an underdone potato. There's more gravy than of grave about you, whatever you are." Now, Scrooge was not in the habit of making jokes, but he did so now in order to keep down his horror. And yet, how much greater was Scrooge's horror when the specter, untying the kerchief around its head, and then its lower jaw dropped down onto its breast. "Oh, mercy! Dreadful apparition! Why do spirits walk the earth, and why do they come to me?" "It is required of every man that the spirit within him should walk abroad among his fellow men and travel far and wide. And if that spirit goes not forth in life, it is doomed to do so after death. It must wander the world and witness that which it cannot share, but might have shared and come to happiness." "You are chained, Jacob. Tell me why." "I wear the chain that I forged in life. I made it link by link and yard by yard. Is its pattern strange to you? Oh, but would you know the length and weight of the chain you bear yourself? It was as long and as heavy as mine 7 Christmas Eves ago, but you have labored on it since. It is a ponderous chain. Speak comfort to me, Jacob." "I have none to give. I cannot rest. I cannot stay. I cannot linger anywhere. In life, my spirit never roamed beyond our counting house. Mark me. In life, my spirit never roamed beyond the confines of our money-changing hole, and weary journeys lie before me." "But 7 years dead, Jacob, and traveling all the time. Do you travel fast?" "On the wings of the wind." "But you were always a great man of business, Jacob." "Business! Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, benevolence, those things were all my business. Hear me, my time is nearly gone. I have come tonight because there is yet a chance and hope of you escaping my fate, a chance and hope of my procuring Ebenezer. You were always a great friend to me, Jacob. God bless you. You will be haunted by 3 spirits. Is that the chance and hope you spoke of, Jacob? I'm sorry, I think I'd rather not. Without their visitation, you cannot hope to shun the path I tread. Expect the first when the bell tolls 1. Expect the second on the next night at the same hour. The third when the last stroke of 12 has ceased to vibrate. Look to see me no more. And for your sake, Ebenezer, remember what has passed between us. And then the spirit began to walk backward, and at every step it took, the window raised itself a little, so that by the time the specter stood in front of it, the window was wide open. And then the ghost floated out into the bleak, dark night. Scrooge ran to the open window and he closed it. And then he ran to his bedroom door by which the spirit had entered. It was double locked, as Scrooge had done with his own hand, and those locks were undisturbed. Scrooge started to say, hum, but he stopped on the first syllable. And then he heard the church clock toll a deep, hollow, melancholy 1. Light flashed upon the room on the instant, and Scrooge found himself face to face with a spirit like a child. Yet not so much like a child as like an old man. The hair was white, as if with age, but the face had not a line upon it. But what was most incredible of all is that from the spirit's head there issued a clear jet of light by which the entire room was illuminated. Are you the spirit whose coming was foretold to me? I am. Who are you? I am the ghost of Christmas past. Long past? No, your past. What business brings you here? Your welfare. The things that I will show you are the shadows of things that have been. They will have no consciousness of us. Rise and walk with me. The Spirit's hand, although it was as gentle as a woman's touch, was not to be resisted. And Scrooge, seeing that the Spirit was leading him towards the now open window, fell upon his knees and clasped the Spirit's robes in supplication. Mercy, Spirit, I am mortal. I am likely to fall. Bear but a touch of my hand here in your heart, and you shall be upheld. The room and all its contents vanished on the instant, and Scrooge found himself in a snowy landscape on a Christmas morning. Do you recognize this place? Recognize it? Spirit, I grew up in this place. I was a boy here. Do you recollect the way? Recollected, Spirit, I could walk it blindfold. Strange, then, that you have forgotten your way for so many years. Come, let us to the schoolhouse. A solitary boy, abandoned and neglected by his friends, remains there still. They went to the schoolhouse, walked through the door, and in the schoolhouse Scrooge saw himself as a young boy sitting all alone, and Scrooge's heart was filled with pity. What is the matter? Oh, nothing, Spirit. Something, I think. No, it's just that there was a little boy who was singing a Christmas carol outside of my window last night. I wish I could have given him something. That's all. And then the schoolhouse door burst open, and Scrooge's sister, little Fan, ran into the room and embraced Scrooge. "Oh, dear brother, I've come to bring you home, home for good and all. Oh, Father's so much nicer than he used to be, brother, that home is now like heaven." A delicate creature, whom a breath might have withered, but she had a large heart. Yes, she did, Spirit. I will not gainsay it. She died a woman and had, I think, children. Yes, Spirit, one child. Yes, your nephew, Fred. Let us see another Christmas. And then Scrooge's self grew larger at those words, and Scrooge saw himself as a young man, now in the prime of life, sitting on a park bench in the snow. But he was not alone. Sitting beside Scrooge's younger self, there was a young girl named Belle, dressed in black, and in Belle's eyes there were tears. "Ebenezer, it matters little. To you, very little. Another idol has displaced me, and if it should comfort you in time to come as I would have tried to do, then I have no cause to grieve." "What idol has displaced you?" said Scrooge's younger self to Belle. "A golden one. Ebenezer, you fear the world too much. I have seen your nobler aspirations fall away one by one until the master passion, gain, engrosses you. Have I not?" "Well, what then? If I've become so much wiser in matters of business, what then? I have not changed towards you. Belle, have I ever sought release from our engagement? In words? No. Never." "Well, in what then?" "In a changed nature, in an altered spirit, in another atmosphere of life, with another hope as its great end. Ebenezer, our contract is an old one. It was made when we were both poor. If you were free today, tomorrow, yesterday, can I believe that you would again choose for your bride a penniless girl, and that in choosing her your regret and your recrimination would surely follow? I do know it, and so, Ebenezer, I release you. I release you with a full heart for the love of the man that you once were. May you be happy in the life you have chosen." "Spirit, remove me from this place. I told you, these are the shadows of things that have been, that they are the way that they are. Do not blame me. Spirit, remove me from this place. I cannot bear it. Take me back. Haunt me no longer." Scrooge awoke in his own bedroom. Yes. But it had undergone a surprising transformation. The walls and the ceiling were so hung with living green that it seemed a perfect grove, and a mighty fire roared in the fireplace, the likes of which the chimney had never seen before in Scrooge's time, or even in old Jacob Marley's time. And on the floor, to form a kind of throne, there were turkeys, geese, great sucking pigs, joints of beef, barrels of oysters, red-hot chestnuts, cherry-cheeked apples, luscious pears, and bowls of punch. And sitting on this couch, there was a giant glorious to see. Come in and know me better, man. I am the ghost of Christmas present. Look upon me. Have you ever seen the like of me before?" "Oh, never. Spirit, I have begun to learn a lesson last night, which is working now. Conduct me where you will. Touch my robe! And Scrooge did as he was told, and he held it fast. The room and all of its contents vanished on the instant, and Scrooge and the ghost of Christmas Present found themselves walking the streets of the city. And it was apparent by all of the decorations in the shop windows that it was Christmas time. And then the ghost of Christmas Present conducted Scrooge to Bob Cratchit's four-room house. Then uprose Mrs. Cratchit, dressed but poorly, in a twice-turned gown, but brave in ribbons, which are cheap and make a goodly show for sixpence. And beside her was one of her daughters, Miss Belinda Cratchit, also brave in ribbons. And Master Peter Cratchit sat by the fireplace, poking at the sizzling potatoes on the fire. And then two little Cratchits, boy and girl, came tearing into the house, saying that they had smelt the goose and known it for their own. "I wonder what has got your precious father, then," said Mrs. Cratchit, "and your brother, Tiny Tim, and Martha wasn't late, half so late last Christmas by half an hour." "Here's Martha, Mother," said Martha, entering through the door. "Here's Martha, Mother," cried the two ubiquitous young Cratchits. "Oh, Martha, hurrah! There's such a goose, Martha!" "My dear, how late you are. Never mind. Sit yourself down by the fire, my dear, and get yourself warm. Lord bless you." "No, no," cried the two little Cratchits, who seemed to be everywhere at once. "No, here's Father coming. Hide, Martha, hide." And so Martha hid, and then in through the front door came Bob Cratchit, the father, with Tiny Tim upon his shoulder. Alas for Tiny Tim. He bore a little crutch and had his limbs supported by an iron frame. "Where's our Martha, then?" said Bob Cratchit, looking around the room. "Oh, Martha's not coming. Not coming. Not coming upon Christmas Day." Well, Martha didn't like to see her father disappointed, even if it was only a joke, so she came out prematurely from her hiding place, and Bob hugged and kissed his daughter to his heart's content. And then the two little Cratchits bore Tiny Tim off to the wash house so he might hear the pudding singing in the copper. And how did little Tim behave today? Oh, as good as gold, my dear. And better. He gets thoughtful, sitting by himself so much, and he says the strangest things you ever heard. He said to me while we were coming home from the church today that he hoped people had seen him in the church because he was a cripple, and that it might be pleasant for them to remember upon Christmas Day he who made lame beggars walk and blind men see. But Tiny Tim is growing, strong and hearty. Tim's active little crutch was heard upon the floor, and not another word was spoken. Finally, all the places at the table were set, and grace was said, and Mrs. Cratchit entered with the goose in high procession. And there was a long, breathless pause as Mrs. Cratchit stood with the carving knife poised upon the goose's breast, and when she cut into it, and the long-awaited gush of stuffing issued forth, there was a murmur of joy and delight around the entire table. Even Tiny Tim feebly banged his knife on the edge of the table and cried, "Hurrah!" There never was such a goose. And eked out by mashed potatoes and apple sauce, it was a meal sufficient for the entire family. And the two little Cratchits in particular were steeped in sage and onion up to the eyebrows. But then there was the pudding, a speckled cannonball with a sprig of Christmas holly on the top. Oh, wonderful pudding. Everyone had something to say about it. Bob Cratchit said he thought that pudding was the best achievement by Mrs. Cratchit since their marriage. And yet, not one of them said, or even thought, that it was actually quite a small pudding for such a large family. Any Cratchit would have blushed to even think such a thing. "A Merry Christmas to us all, my dears," said Bob. "God bless us," which all the family re-echoed. "God bless us, everyone," said Tiny Tim, the last of all. He sat very close by his father's side on his little stool, and Bob held Tim's withered little hand in his, as if he loved the child and wished to keep him by his side, and dreaded that he might soon be taken from him. "Spirit," said Scrooge, speaking now more like his former and not his latter self. "Spirit, tell me if Tiny Tim will live. I see a vacant seat and a crutch without an owner, carefully preserved. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die." "Oh, no, 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 Spirit, say he will be spared." "If these shadows remain unaltered, the child will die." "But what then? If he were like to die, he had better do it and decrease the surplus population." "Oh, proud man! You must forbear that wicked cant until you know what the surplus is and where it is. What will you decide what men shall live and what men shall die? It may be that you, Ebenezer Scrooge, in the eyes of heaven, are more worthless and less fit to live than millions that are like this poor man's child." "Ebenezer Scrooge," said Bob, raising his glass, "I give you Mr. Scrooge, the founder of the feast." "Oh, the founder of the feast, indeed! I wish I had him here. I'd give him a piece of my mind to feast upon. I hope he have a good appetite for it, too." "My dear, the children, Christmas Day." "I'm sure it's only on Christmas Day that one should drink a toast to such an odious, stingy, hard-hearted man as Ebenezer Scrooge. You know he is, Robert. No one knows it better than you, poor fellow." "My dear, Christmas Day." "Very well, then. I'll drink his health for your sake, and the day's, not for his. Long life to him. I'm sure he'll be very merry and very happy, I have no doubt." The children drank this toast after her, but this was the first act of the evening that had no heartiness in it, because Scrooge was the ogre of the family, and the mere mention of his name cast a shadow over the party that was not dispelled for a full 5 minutes. But after it had been dispelled, they were 10 times merrier than before, all the better for Scrooge the Baleful being finally done with. And they sat by the fire, and after a while they had a song about a little boy wandering lost in the snow, and Tiny Tim, who had a plaintive little voice, sang it very well indeed. There was nothing of high mark in any of this. They were not a handsome family. They were not well dressed. Their shoes were far from waterproof. Their clothes were scanty. And Bob Cratchit, I dare say, knew intimately the inside of a pawnbroker's. But they were happy and contented to be with one another, and grateful for the time. And as they began to fade away from view, Scrooge kept his eye upon them, and especially upon Tiny Tim, until the last. Many places did Scrooge and the ghost of Christmas Present go. Far they went, and everywhere they went there was a happy end. They went by sick beds, and people were cheerful. They went to foreign lands, and people felt close at home, and the ghost taught Scrooge its precepts. And then, as they came unto a barren, open place, Scrooge looked about him for the ghost of Christmas Present, but it was gone. And then, as the last stroke of 12 ceased to vibrate, Scrooge beheld a solemn phantom, draped and hooded, gliding as if by mist on the ground. towards him. The phantom slowly, gravely, silently approached. It was clothed in a deep black garment, so that its head, its face, its very form was not able to be determined except for one outstretched hand. I am in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come, ghost of the future. I fear you. I fear you more than any other spirit I have yet seen. But as I know your intent is to do me good, and as I hope to live to be a better man than what I was, I will follow you, and I will do it with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me? And the spirit said nothing, but pointed forward. Lead me on, spirit, lead me on. And they scarcely seemed to enter the city, but rather the city sprang up around them, where they were now in the heart of it, amongst the merchants. Scrooge observed a small knot of businessmen, which the spectre pointed toward, and Scrooge advanced to hear their talk. I don't know much about it myself. I only know he's dead. I thought he'd never die. What's he going to do with his money? Couldn't say. Didn't leave it to me, that's all I know. It's going to be a very cheap funeral, too. I can't think of a single soul who's going to go to it. Bye-bye. And then the scene changed, and Scrooge found himself almost bumping into a bare, uncurtained bed. And on that bed, covered with a sheet, unwatched, unwept, uncared for, was the body of an unknown, plundered man. Spirit, yes, I understand. The fate of this unhappy man might well be like my own, but Spirit, show me some place where there is some tenderness connected with a death, or this baleful image will forever haunt me. And then the ghost of Christmas yet to come conveyed Scrooge to a place he had been before, to Bob Cratchit's four-room house. Mrs. Cratchit and her children sat around the fire. Quiet. It was very quiet. The two little Cratchits stood still as statues in two different corners of the room. Mrs. Cratchit and her daughters were engaged upon some sewing, while Master Peter Cratchit read aloud from a book. But surely they were very quiet. And Peter Cratchit read, "And then he took a child and set him down in the midst of them." Mrs. Cratchit put down her sewing and covered her eyes. "I'm sorry. It's my eyes. They get weak with the candlelight, and I wouldn't want to show weak eyes to your father now for all the world. It must be getting near his time." "It's past his time, rather," said Peter Cratchit. "I think Father's walked a little slower than he used to these past few weeks, Mother." "Oh, I have known your father to walk with Tiny Tim upon his shoulder, very fast indeed. But he was very light to carry, and your father loved him so that it was no trouble. No trouble. Oh, here's your father at the door." And in came Bob Cratchit, his comforter wrapped tightly about him. He had need of it, poor fellow. His tea was ready by the fire, and all the children gathered round to see who could help him to it most. And the two little Cratchits each sat on one of Bob's knees, and they laid their cheeks upon his as if to say, "Please don't mind it, Father. Please don't be grieved." Bob Cratchit praised the industry of Mrs. Cratchit and the girls, saying that they would surely be done all the sewing by next Sunday. "Sunday? Then you went there today, then, Robert?" "Yes, my dear. I wish you could have gone. It would do you good to see how green a place it is. But you'll see it often. But I had to go because I promised him that I would walk there on a Sunday. My little child. My little child. Bob broke down all at once. He couldn't help it, poor fellow. If he could have helped it, he and his little child may have been farther apart than perhaps they were. Spirit, something tells me that our time together is nearing its end. I do not know how I know it, but I know. Spirit, who was that man that I saw lying dead? And then the ghost conveyed Scrooge to a bare, ruined graveyard. The specter stood among a small knot of graves and pointed down to one. Before I draw nearer to that stone to which you point, Spirit, answer me one thing. Are these the shadows of things that will be, or are they the shadows of things that may be only? The Spirit made no answer, but pointed down at the grave. And then Scrooge, moving forward, followed the Spirit's finger and read upon that etched gravestone his own name, Ebenezer Scrooge. Am I the man who lay on that bed? No, Spirit, no, hear me. I am not the man I was. I am not the man that I would have been but for these visitations. Why would you show me these things if I am beyond all hope? For the very first time, the Spirit's hand faltered. I will keep Christmas in my heart and honor it all the year. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. I shall not shut out the lessons that they teach. Spirit, please say that there is a way for me to sponge off the writing of this stone. And then, as Scrooge fell to his knees in one last prayer to have his fate reversed, he saw the phantom's form change, shrink, collapse, and dwindle down into a bedpost. Yes, and the bedpost was his own. The bedroom was his own. But what was best of all is the time before him was his own to make amends in. He ran to the window and opened it. No fog, no night, just bright, shining, glorious day. And then he was interrupted in his thoughts by the church bells ringing the lustiest peals he had ever heard. Oh, glorious, glorious. And then Scrooge saw a little boy walking on the ground outside of his window. Scrooge leaned his head outside of the window. "Hello, my fine fellow." "Hello? What's today?" "Today? Why, it's Christmas Day." "Christmas Day? I haven't missed it. The spirits have done it all in one night. Well, of course, they can do whatever they want." I don't know what to do. I'm as happy as an angel. I'm as merry as a schoolboy. I'm as giddy as a drunken man. A Merry Christmas to everyone. A Happy New Year to all the world. Oh, hello, my fine fellow. Hello? Do you know the poulterers in the last street over but one? Oh, I should hope I did. Do they still have that prize turkey hanging in the window? What, the one as big as me? What a delightful boy. It's such a pleasure to talk to him. Yes, my fine fellow, I want you to go and buy it. What? No, I am in earnest. I will throw you down the money and you must bring the man back so that I may instruct him where to deliver it. Come back with a man, I'll give you a shilling. Come back with a man in 5 minutes, I'll give you half a crown. Well, that little boy was off like a shot. I'll send it to Bob Cratchit's house. He shan't know who sent it. Why, that turkey's twice the size of Tiny Tim. Scrooge dressed himself in all his best and went out into the city. And it was a snowy Christmas morning, and the people were passing by in all their best, just as Scrooge had seen them with the ghost of Christmas present. And at every person who passed him, Scrooge gave a delighted smile. And he looked so irresistibly pleasant that finally one man stopped, looked at Scrooge, and said, "A Merry Christmas to you, sir. God bless you." And Scrooge said often after that of all the beautiful sounds in the world, those were among the most beautiful that he had ever heard. Around noon, Scrooge directed his steps to his nephew's house. This is what he had resolved to do, and he paced back and forth in front of the door nearly a dozen times before he finally made a dash, and he knocked on the door. "My goodness, who could that be?" said Fred, Scrooge's nephew. "It is I, Fred. It is I, your Uncle Scrooge. I have come to Christmas dinner. Will you let me in, Fred?" Let him in. It was a miracle his nephew didn't shake his arm off. He was at home in 5 minutes. Nothing could have been hard here. Wonderful friends, wonderful party, wonderful unanimity, wonderful happiness. But Scrooge was all the earlier into the office the next morning. He had set his heart on one thing, and that was to catch Bob Cratchit coming in late. That's what Scrooge had set his heart upon, and he did it. 9 o'clock. No Bob. 9:15. No Bob. Bob Cratchit was a full 18 and a half minutes late. And when Bob Cratchit came in, his hat and comforter were already off him. He threw off his jacket, sat down at his desk, and began to write furiously as if he was trying to overtake 9 o'clock. "Bob Cratchit," said Scrooge in his old accustomed voice, or as near as he could feign it. "Yes, sir. I am behind my time." "Yes, you are. I believe you are. And now, Bob Cratchit, I am not going to stand for this behavior any longer. And therefore, I am going to raise your salary." Bob Cratchit moved a little closer to the fire poker. "A Merry Christmas, Bob. A merrier Christmas than I have given you these many years. I will raise your salary, and I shall endeavor to assist your struggling family, and we will discuss your affairs this very afternoon. And now, take this money and go buy yourself another coal scuttle before you dot another I, Bob Cratchit." Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all, and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, Scrooge became a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, as good a man as any man in the entire good old world. Some people laughed to see the change in him, but Scrooge paid them no mind, because his own heart laughed now, and that was quite enough for him. He had no further business with spirits, and ever after, it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed the knowledge. And may the same also be said of us, of all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone.